The history of the Enterprise. One of the most important starships in interstellar history, the Enterprise NX-01 was the culmination of the NX project. The NX-01 was the first NX-class starship, launched by the United Earth Starfleet in 2151. The Enterprise established the United Earth as an interstellar power and caused wholesale revolution in Alpha and Beta Quadrant politics, paving the way for the creation of the Coalition of Planets in 2155 and eventually the United Federation of Planets in 2161. For humanity to make space exploration missions possible within a single natural lifetime, humans had to make themselves capable of traveling faster than Warp 1. The speed of light. After Zefram Cochrane made a successful warp test in the Phoenix in 2063, the propulsion system he created was further developed in 2119. Several engineers, such as Henry Archer and Cochrane himself, began the work that paved the way directly to the Enterprise. At the Warp 5 complex in Bozeman, Montana. Over the next 32 years, warp engine development continued until humanity's first Warp 5 engine was created. This engine was capable of speeds that finally made interstellar travel more survivable periods possible. That is, in days, weeks, or months instead of years. Consequently, humanity was able to construct its first Warp 5 capable starship, Enterprise, completed in 2151. Initially, Enterprise had a theoretical maximum speed of Warp 4.5. Aside from its engine, Enterprise was also the first vessel to be equipped with a transporter. Aside from its engine, the Enterprise was the first Earth vessel to be equipped with a transporter rated for transporting biological organisms. However, the machine malfunctioned a number of times before the initial bugs were worked out. The preferred method of travel was still the shuttle pod, unless other options were exhausted. After trips in the pod, it was standard procedure for returning crew members and passengers to utilize the decontamination chamber. The ship was not as advanced in all areas, unlike the Vulcan ships of its day. It did not possess tractor beams, merely magnetic grapplers. Enterprise had a standard crew complement of 83 humans, with an addition of a Vulcan and a Denobulan. In January 2155, the members of the Enterprise crew were hailed as heroes, as laying the groundwork for the Alliance, a precursor to the formation of the United Federation of Planets. The Enterprise was retired in 2161 to make way for new, more advanced starships. It was then placed in the Federation Museum, where it still remains in the 24th century. The USS Enterprise NCC-1701 was a 23rd century Federation Constitution-class starship operated by Starfleet. In the course of her career, the Enterprise became the most celebrated starship of her time. In her 40 years of service and discovery, through upgrades and at least 2 refits, she took part in many numerous first contact, military engagement, and time travels. She achieved her most lasting fame from a 5-year mission from 2265 to 2270 under the command of Captain James T. Kirk. The Enterprise was destroyed over the Genesis planet in 2285 when Kirk activated the ship's auto-destruct sequence to prevent the Enterprise from falling into the hands of the Klingons. In 2285, the Enterprise was in a low-tempo training cycle based in the Sol system. Admiral Kirk boarded his old command to observe a cadet training course. The USS Enterprise NCC-1701 was a 23rd century Federation Constitution-class starship operated by Starfleet. Launched in 2258, the vessel was officially made the Federation flagship. After only 5 years of service, the Enterprise was destroyed during the battle over the planet Altamid in 2263. The Enterprise was under construction around 2255 at the Riverside Shipyard in Iowa, and launched into service from San Francisco Fleet Yard's Earth. The 5-year mission. In 2260, following nearly a year of repairs, the Enterprise was rechristened and refitted to become the first starship to embark on a 5-year mission of uncharted deep space exploration. The USS Enterprise NCC-1701A was a 23rd century Federation Constitution-class starship operated by Starfleet. Externally, the Enterprise-A was virtually identical to the refit of the USS Enterprise, destroyed several months prior to launch. The bridge was a customary location on Deck 1. At least 3 different models were used during the ship's service. The Torpedo Bay was on Deck 13. It had much more automation than the previous Enterprise, and the torpedo room itself was smaller and enclosed. The Shuttle Bay was located at the rear of the ship's engineering section. Unlike her predecessor, the Shuttle Bay of the Enterprise-A was separate and distinct from the Cargo Bay. The ship had at least 2, possibly 5 shuttlecraft, including Galileo and Copernicus. Normally, a tractor beam guided the shuttle landing. A large net barricade could erect to capture an incoming shuttle that was landing too fast or otherwise disabled. Officers and crew quarters, similar to those in the previous Enterprise, enlisted crew members were required to bunk together. As many as 8 crew members were assigned to one room. Chimes sounded at the top of every hour. Meals were prepared in the galley, although there appeared to be primitive replicators on board the ship. The Enterprise-A had a virtually identical warp core similar to the Galaxy class of 80 years later. The core could be accessed through main engineering on Deck 15. An isolation door could be brought down to separate the core from the rest of the ship. There was a crew lounge at the front of the ship, which contained several maritime relics, including a steering wheel from a sailing ship, inscribed with the ship's motto, "To boldly go where no man has gone before." An emergency transmitter was also located in the lounge. The officers had a private dining hall in the saucer section, which was often used to entertain guests. There were several paintings in the room, including a portrait of Abraham Lincoln, a personal hero of James T. Kirk. The brig was located in the bowels of the engineering section. It was designed to be escape-proof, certified by Captain Spock. The turbo shafts were triangular in shape, in addition to normal corridors. In 2286, the Enterprise-A was commissioned at the San Francisco Fleet Yards on stardate 8442.5. She was launched from Earth Space Dock on the order of the Federation Council in appreciation of Captain James T. Kirk and his crew's effort to prevent the whale probe from devastating Earth. The crew initially thought that they were going to be reassigned to the Excelsior, or according to Leonard McCoy, a freighter at best. But the Enterprise was soon revealed docked behind the Excelsior. The crew took their stations and the Enterprise left space dock on the Shakedown Cruise. The Shakedown did not proceed as planned, and the Enterprise limped back to space dock for several weeks of repair under the supervision of Captain Montgomery Scott. Although her warp drive was working perfectly, half the doors of the ship were malfunctioning and several control interfaces did not work. The transporter was also non-functional, requiring shuttles to be used for off-ship missions. Following the Kittimer mission, the Enterprise was ordered by Starfleet Command to return to space dock to be decommissioned. In spite of this, Captain Kirk ordered the ship on course to the second star on the right, and straight on till morning. Kirk later recorded in his log that the Enterprise and her history will shortly become the care of another crew. The USS Enterprise NCC-1701B was a 23rd century Federation Excelsior-class starship operated by Starfleet. This was the third Federation ship to bear the name Enterprise. On stardate 9715.5 in the year 2293, the Enterprise-B was commissioned. Soon thereafter, the starship was launched under the command of Captain John Harrisman from dry dock orbiting Earth. The ship was christened with a bottle of Dom Perignon Vintage 2265. Honoring the guests on board the ship's maiden voyage included Captains James T. Kirk, Montgomery Scott, Commander Pavel Chekhov of the decommissioned Enterprise-A, along with many journalists. The vessel was still incomplete at the time of the launch and did not have a medical staff, photon torpedoes, or tractor beam, all of which was scheduled for delivery the following Tuesday. The dignitaries were given a tour of the ship, which impressed even Scotty, himself a noted critic of the Excelsior class. Harrisman requested that Captain Kirk give the order to get underway, and he accepted. Her first journey was mostly for publicity purposes, and the ship was not scheduled to venture much past Pluto. However, the Enterprise-B was the only ship in range capable of responding to a distress call from the two Federation transport ships, the USS LaCalle and the USS Robert Fox. The ships were carrying Ail-Orian refugees, had become trapped in an energy distortion called the Nexus. Because the Enterprise-B lacked equipment necessary to rescue the ships, the Robert Fox was destroyed before the Enterprise could transport passengers. Only 47 were brought aboard from the LaCalle, before it too was destroyed. Chekhov served as a makeshift medical officer, enlisting several journalists to help treat survivors, including Guinan, the future bartender of the Enterprise-D, and Tully and Soren. The Enterprise itself became ensnared with the Nexus when she maneuvered within transporter range of the LaCalle. Scotty devised a plan to use a resonant burst from the deflector dish in order to simulate an antimatter explosion and free the Enterprise. Kirk went to deflector control to make necessary modifications as the Enterprise engineering hull was struck by an energy tendril. Harrisman was going to do it himself, but Kirk took the role instead, deciding that Harrisman as ship's captain was needed on the bridge, and in the captain's chair. The Enterprise escaped with minor casualties and a hull breach. Kirk was believed to be killed in the breach, and the mission became notorious for his loss. The USS Enterprise NCC-1701C was a 24th century Federation Ambassador-class starship operated by Starfleet. This was the fourth Federation starship to bear the name Enterprise. In 2344, Captain Rachel Garrett was the commanding officer of the ship. In 2344, the Enterprise responded to a distress call from a Klingon outpost on Narenda 3. Which was under attack by the Romulan Star Empire. When the Enterprise arrived at the outpost, she was engaged by 4 Romulan warbirds. Few details are known about the actual battle. What is known, however, that the Enterprise was destroyed with the presumed loss of all hands. Starfleet would not commission another Enterprise until nearly 2 decades later in 2363. It was later revealed by Sela that the Romulans took a number of the ship's crew prisoner. In the aftermath of the battle, the Klingons were deeply impressed by the act of self-sacrifice by the Starfleet crew to protect a Klingon outpost, and the Enterprise C's ultimate legacy was reinforced by relations between the Klingon Empire and the United Federation of Planets, leading to a close alliance of peace. The USS Enterprise-D was a 24th century Federation-class starship operated by Starfleet. This was the 5th starship to bear the name Enterprise. During her career, the Enterprise served as the Federation flagship. The Enterprise was destroyed during the Battle of Meridian 3 in 2371. The Enterprise-D was built at Utopia Planitia Field Yards orbiting Mars in the Sol system. Construction was supervised by Commander Orville Quintros. Dr. Leah Brahms was responsible for much of the Enterprise warp propulsion system design. Some of the Enterprise's components were derived from technology originally developed on the USS Pegasus. In an alternate timeline, the Enterprise was the first Galaxy-class warship constructed. On Stardate 40759.5 in the year 2363, the Enterprise was launched from Mars. A year later, on Stardate 42025.5, the Enterprise was commissioned. Final system completion and shakedown was conducted at Earth Station McKinley. Captain Jean-Luc Picard took command of the ship on Stardate 41148 at the order of Rear Admiral Nora Satei. The Enterprise pushed her engines to the limit, warp 9.8. During the Farpoint mission in 2364, while fleeing from the entity known as Q, she also conducted the first high warp saucer separation at that time. The traveler used the energy of his thoughts to move the Enterprise to the end of the universe, at speeds registering on instruments as exceeding warp 10 and going off the warp scale. The Enterprise became one of the first few Federation ships to use a cloaking device in 2370, and perhaps the first to successfully use a phased cloak. The USS Enterprise NCC-1701-E was a 24th century Federation Sovereign-class starship operated by Starfleet. This was the sixth Federation starship to bear the name Enterprise. The Enterprise was launched on 2372 on stardate 49827.5 and was, at the time, the most advanced ship in the fleet. She was constructed at the San Francisco Fleet Yards orbiting Earth. Captain Jean-Luc Picard assumed command shortly after the vessel's christening, just after a year following the destruction of her predecessor. Most of the crew of the USS Enterprise-D were reassigned to the E, including almost the entire senior staff. The sole exception was Lieutenant Commander Worf, who was reassigned to Space Station Deep Space Nine. In her original configuration, the Enterprise-E was 685 meters long and had 24 decks. She was equipped with 12 phaser arrays and 5 torpedo tubes. By 2379, the Enterprise-E had undergone at least one refit, including 4 additional phaser arrays and 5 additional photon torpedo tubes. The number of decks was also increased by 5 to a minimum of 29. Sections included deflector control, stellar cartography, hydroponics on Deck 11, and 1 sickbay ward. Main engineering and sickbay were on Deck 16. The ship could also be controlled by a manual steering column located on the bridge. She was also the first Enterprise to be equipped with an emergency medical hologram. The Enterprise carried a newer design of shuttlecraft as well as numerous other forms of transportation, including a warp-capable captain's yacht and a special multi-purpose shuttlecraft, the Argo. The yacht was installed as part of the saucer section and detached upon deployment. Other auxiliary craft were launched by 2 shuttle bays, one at the aft and one at the secondary hull, another near the aft end of the primary hull.